Welcome back to our Simpson Desert trip, part 5 of our series across this iconic Australian outback destination. And I'm currently in South Australia, you're in the Northern Territory. If I do that, I'm in Queensland with Lucas on the video camera. That can only mean one thing, mate.
We're in one place in the world, that's Popple Corner. Behind me is Lake Popple there, and it's a place that you have to stop and check out because there is no place on earth like it. And this might even be the first time some people actually step into the territory, so it can be quite special.
Absolutely. If you're coming out this way, you have to stop here. It's an iconic part of an already iconic trip, but we've got a little bit more in store, haven't we, mate?
Yeah, that's right. It's been a big few days, but I think today's going to be a big one for us. We are travelling north. We're going to follow this lake for a while and join up with the last part of our run, which is the QAA line into Birdsville. And guess what's in store, mate?
Let me guess. Yeah.
A couple of sand dunes, and they're going to get bigger too.
That's right, they are going to get bigger. So join us as we finish our Simpson Desert crossing. We're headed towards Big Red and ultimately Birdsville.
It's easy to forget how far we have come in this journey and all of the amazing things we've done along the way, the people we have met and the animals we have seen. We got well acquainted with this new LandCruiser 300 series on the initial 2,000 kilometre run of Blacktop, travelling into the remote parts of northern South Australia.
The LandCruiser might be designed with harsh off-road conditions in mind, but the new 300 series excels on-road as well. We found the ride quality and bump absorption, not to mention the cabin comfort, are all tailored to long-distance sealed road touring. At highway speed, the diesel engine is efficient, the gearbox is smooth, and the insulation is excellent.
And once we got into those unsealed parts of the Oodnadatta track, we were met with not dust, but mud and lots of corrugations.
The LandCruiser, as expected it has to be said, walked it in. Hundreds of thousands of kilometres of pre-launch specific off-road testing have resulted in a large four-wheel drive that tackles harsh terrain with ease. For decades, Australians have sung the praises of Toyota's LandCruiser for remote area touring, and despite more options than ever before, the 300 series remains one of the strongest contenders on the market. Across the duration of our nearly 6,000 kilometre drive, the LandCruiser 300 series averaged just over 13 litres per 100 kilometres.
Then we got into the proper remote country, trading that mud and gibber plain for the sand and clay pans of the mighty Simpson Desert. It was an incredible journey, and my only regret was not being able to spend more time out here, enjoying those wild expanses, sitting in those beautiful remote campsites, and looking up at the bright, starry sky at night.
We're nearing the end of our desert journey, and I thought I'd take the opportunity this morning just to pop the bonnet of this 300 series and have a bit of a look underneath the engine bay, which is a good habit to get into when you're doing this sort of remote area travel, especially if you've got an older vehicle with a few more Ks on the clock. You can kind of see what's going on, and sometimes you can actively stop a problem before it becomes a big problem. No issues here so far. This is a new vehicle, and newer ones are generally going to be quite reliable even under hard work like this. But this is the new 3.3 litre twin turbo V6. It does replace a 4.5 litre twin turbo V8, which Toyota did discontinue, mostly because of emissions and economy reasons. But this new V6 is doing quite well. It makes more power and more torque than the old V8, 227 kilowatts and 700 Newton meters. And that of course runs through a new 10-speed automatic gearbox. Now, just for a bit of a rundown here, one thing you should always keep an eye on under here is your coolant and power steering and that sort of thing. So we've got our power steering reservoir. That is clear, so you can keep an eye on what the level is like. And the coolant, that's your big one here. Now that is all looking very nice. Other things you can look for is the alternator. In modern vehicles, they are unfortunately quite often slung down fairly low amongst the mud and that sort of thing. That can cause issues, but a good thing to do is just to find it so you can eyeball it, you know where it is, and then if you do have problems with it, you can start to look at things. We've got an air filter over there. You can keep an eye on the condition of that, especially if you're driving through dusty conditions. Consider packing a spare one, and then you can even replace it halfway through the trip. And your battery. The battery here, you might not see it when you first have a look around, but it's actually hiding underneath a cover there, and that does help keep the mud off it, which, as you can see here, we have collected a little bit of mud during our journey. So all in all, this new V6 is doing quite well. We haven't had any issues so far, and from a performance point of view, I'm really loving the way this thing delivers torque, especially in the lower and middle ranges for when you're punching up sand dunes. And I think it will be a nice comfy way to punch out the next 2,000 kilometres as we head home.
After Popple Corner, we're getting into the last 100 kilometres of our desert crossing. We're on the QAA line now and we're heading towards Birdsville. The colours of the dunes change in this part of the desert, and it's not long until we hit Air Creek. It's dry this time around, so we don't need to make that 50-kilometre diversion to the north.
Trent, only a few more dunes to go, mate. They're really big.
Sand dunes?
Yes.
I haven't seen any
yet.
yet.
Yeah, I know.
Haven't noticed one.
I think I've only noticed about 1,100 of them in the last few days.
And down and up and down.
But we are getting to the crescendo.
We are.
There's a couple more dunes to pop over here, and we should be, looking at the map, getting near Big Red.
Big Red will appear before us.
Yeah, and it's a great thing about going from west to east, I think. You do sort of reach this big finale, and it makes a bit of a moment, I suppose.
And the other point that's worth making for people who haven't been to Big Red, the challenging climb is actually going west to east, right? I always thought it was east to west, but it's west to east.
Yeah, that's right. So this will be your first time to Big Red?
First time up Big Red,
right.
mate. Yep.
Oh, big moment. I'm excited. But there's a couple of dunes here, actually. They do get really big on this part of the desert.
They spread out too, right? Like where we came from on the Mount Dare side, they're a lot closer. They have started to spread out here.
Yeah, and you'll notice some of these tracks up the dunes, they do get a little bit flogged out by traffic, so they get rutted. It kind of makes them a little bit more challenging because you can't go up them at a rate of knots. You do have to go slow and depend upon the car. But I've got to say, mate, this old LandCruiser...
That's what I was about to say. It's an old LandCruiser, but it's a new LandCruiser, isn't it? It's old in that it's exactly what we expected it to be. I'm obviously a passenger at the moment. It's incredibly comfortable sitting here while you're driving, no matter what the terrain is. And we do say with LandCruisers, you jump out of 100 into a 200 and now a 300. They do feel like an old cardigan.
That's right.
In many ways that they're familiar, they're comfortable, you know what you're going to get. But this has been impressive, hasn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. A couple of things for me, I suppose, from the review point of view. The 3.3 litre V6,
Yep.
Yes, everyone bemoans the loss of the V8. This has performed really well.
Unbelievable.
We're dipping under a quarter of a tank of fuel at the moment.
As we come into town.
I think that's impressive. I'm just going to give it a punch up this dune here, because I want to show you this 10-speed. I'm in automatic here, sand mode whatsoever, just point it up.
And not approaching it with any run-up either, really just coming in nice and smooth.
I like that this gearbox just makes good decisions, and it makes them quickly when it needs to change down, but I've got torque there, right? That's 1500 RPM. It's changing down slightly, but it makes it so easy just to punch up a dune.
Unbelievable. You know what's really interesting out here too? If you're not driving a Toyota, you're kind of not really one of them out here, so to speak, right? It's 70 series, 100 series, 200 series. And in the radio chatter, because when you're out here in the Simpson Desert, you generally use channel 10 on your UHF so you can speak to other people and know who's coming and going. The radio chatter has been, you guys are in a 300 series, how's it going? Old mate in his 200 series wants to know what we think of the 300. How does the engine work? What's the gearbox like? We've had those questions from real people out here.
Old mate in the 6-cylinder 70 series, he was pretty keen, I think.
He loved it. He loved it.
But it's been good. One thing for me, the suspension, it's been good to a point, I think.
Yeah, it works well up to a point, doesn't it?
Yeah. I guess we'd be one of the very few people out in this part of the world with standard suspension, and you kind of have to take your hat off to it that it's done as well as it has, but you can definitely sense fade after a long day.
Yeah, the front shock absorbers particularly, and we've checked them, you get under there and they're really hot after you've worked them. There's a lot of this desert terrain that is up and down and up and down and up and down, and they're quite tightly packed. So the shocks are extending all the way, compressing all the way, extending again and compressing, and they do that repeatedly. And I think it's at that point that they get to the situation where they are overheated and they don't work as well as they would. But as you said, that's a standard shock absorber designed largely for the road, really, not for this kind of terrain, for days on end. So it has done pretty well. I mean, realistically, We're in a standard 300 series and all we've done is let the tyre pressures down.
That's right. And we've been using low range for a couple of dunes. We've been in high range for most of the time, actually, because this 10-speed's glorious, right? The engine makes a lot of torque. Been using sand mode in this multi-terrain select thing, and that's great. Tightens up the throttle response. It holds the gear ratios a little bit longer, which is exactly what you want for sand driving. You can punch up over a dune like that. Nice and easy. But I guess if people were going to be doing a lot more of this stuff, they probably might look at aftermarket suspension anyway.
I think the thing for me is that this vehicle, and as good as it is, and look, we would have said this when the 100 series was brand new and then when the 200 series was brand new, because they are evolutions of known technology. And I think the thing that is most noticeable for me with this vehicle, for the average punter who's never done this before, it's not going to get any easier than if you're driving something like this. Now, I'm not suggesting everyone's got $100,000 plus to just go and buy a LandCruiser tomorrow, but if you are buying a modern four-wheel drive, there's absolutely nothing to fear with this sort of drive because the vehicle itself is so clever.
Inherently capable.
Yeah, that's
Inherently
right.
capable. But do you know who I think is the unsung hero of this journey, mate?
Me? For putting up with you for a week and a half?
Oh, well, you know,
Yeah,
I might give you a pat on the back later.
Who's the unsung hero?
The bash plate underneath, mate.
Yeah.
It's copped a bit of a hit.
Hasn't
it's
it
copped a
taken
few
a
hits.
hammering? Yeah,
and I got underneath and had a look, and it's showing, you know, it's taken a bit of paint off in a few spots, but it's been turning up day in, day out.
And if you guys wonder why we ask four-wheel drive manufacturers to put bash plates on cars and why we say they should have them, it's for that reason.
Yeah, that's right.
And there you are, look,
Here we
over
are,
a
mate.
dune, and there's Big Red.
So this is the final one, mate. But seeing as this is your first time here, mate, I might just pull up.
Oh, I'm going to get a crack at it, am I?
Yeah,
That's
mate,
very
of
generous
course,
of you.
of course.
I thought you were just going to send me up the hardest
yeah.
line and make an idiot of
I was
myself.
going to make you just get out and watch me do it. No, it's all yours.
Very exciting, mate. You know, this is, as we keep saying and as we've said throughout this video series, this is an iconic trip for anybody who's interested in exploration. And I think that's the part of it as well. For us, this isn't just about testing this vehicle or saying we've driven across the Simpson Desert. You and I are both into early exploration of the country, the people who came out here, the people who discovered areas of the country that only the Indigenous inhabitants knew about.
That's right.
And that's another point to make. We call it Big Red, but the Indigenous name is
Nappanerica.
Nappanerica.
Right.
And it's the sort of trip that you need to undertake to really understand how big Australia is, how remote this country is. And when you stand at Popple Corner, for example, you understand how remote it would have been for the early explorers to come out here.
And how tough
And
they
work it
were.
out.
We've
Oh,
been
unbelievable.
bloody hard living out
Tough
there.
as nails, mate. Tough
I mean,
as
we're
nails.
sitting here, we've got the air conditioning on,
The climate
nice
control,
suspension.
fridge in the back.
That's right.
Yeah.
There's a couple of cold drinks in there.
So we'll take the second hardest line and we'll see how the big 300 series behaves.
All right, mate. No pressure, mate. Here we go.
Deep breaths. Let's have a look at this. Bit of momentum.
It's a bit rough on the way up, but it's handling it all right.
Well, that was pretty easy, wasn't it?
Easy as.
That was very easy.
There was a couple of bumps on the way
Wow.
up there, and I thought this thing is going to buck a bit,
Wow.
but that did really well.
Did really well and just crested over the top nicely. And, you know, we carried a bit of momentum, but we didn't go crazy.
We did, yeah, and we've still got a fair bit of gear in the back. There is a bit of weight in this car at the moment, and the tyre pressures are around 16 psi, so we haven't bagged them right out. I would say that is very easy, mate.
Might have to give it a harder challenge.
Yeah.
Big Red is the Mount Everest of sand dunes for so many Australian four-wheel drivers, and it's the reward at the eastern end of a long Simpson Desert crossing. Low-powered four-wheel drives might struggle with the most challenging Big Red ascent, but the 300 series made light work of the soft, powdery sand. The view west back over the desert is the perfect reward at the end of the trip. Do what we did and spend the night in Birdsville after your desert crossing, then head back up to Big Red early the next morning to watch the sunrise. It's a unique Australian outback experience. Well, two slightly tired and worn out test drivers and one completely unruffled 300 series LandCruiser. We have made it to Big Red on the Birdsville side of the Simpson Desert. And Sam, this Toyota, completely unstressed.
Exactly right, mate. We've conquered about 1,100 sand dunes, and the biggest one at the end here, it did it so easily. I'm very impressed. I mean, conditions have been really good. It's worth saying that. You can get harder crossings of the desert with things like muddy clay pans, really soft sand. Stock standard LandCruiser, standard suspension, standard tyres, a bull bar, roof rack, just genuine accessories. Yes, we do have a 79 series over there with a bit of extra gear inside of it, mostly camera gear, by the way. We've done it so easily.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, it's about 3,000 kilometres just to get here. Been a pretty epic adventure just to get to this point, right? And
Yeah.
we've still got to get home.
Yeah, we've still got to get home. And don't forget, before we even got into the desert, I mean, we were smashing through mud in Oodnadatta, waiting for roads to open. All sorts of things were going on there. And we got this beautiful new paint job on the LandCruiser. Just quietly, I reckon it looks amazing.
Yeah, Toyota's going to be ecstatic with that, aren't they? I think the thing is for us too, this has been a real privilege for us to bring this trip to you, obviously, and to be able to show you how to make your way across the Simpson Desert. But the message that we'd like to get across to you is that there's nothing to fear. If you've followed our episodes leading up to this one and you've looked at the preparation, getting there, the gear that you need to bring and all that kind of stuff, there's absolutely nothing to worry about in undertaking what is an epic off-road adventure, right?
Exactly right. This is truly bucket list stuff for me. And if you can come across the desert, you can experience camping out here, see this part of the country that no one ever actually sees, not many people, even Australians, see. And you can get a bit of time in here, get to the other side. I mean, sitting on top of Big Red here, this is beautiful.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It really is a magical place to come and visit. Make sure if you've got a four-wheel drive, get the gear you need, do the research, and make sure you get out here and experience it for yourself. Watch all of our episodes in the lead up to this final episode to show you all the planning and research that went into it. Don't forget to hit like if you've enjoyed the video. Click on subscribe so you stay up to date with all of our latest content. And of course, all the written content, it's over at Drive.com.au.
Now, mate, I reckon this got up a little bit too easy, so there's a bit of a hard line over
Got
there.
up easy because I was driving.
Maybe I'll have a crack. Thanks, mate.
Yeah, all right, let's go.